another week of Texas high school football, which means another week of myself, Ashley Lorton, and the one, the only Matt Diggs on the fifth quarter.
I'm excited, and I knew this was going to be an amazing week when I heard that you got out of your natural habitat and you got to go into the wild.
I'm officially a studio princess.
There must be something going on in Denton because it's like warm everywhere else in the Metroplex.
It was raining and cold
she was on
raining.
The Twitter talking about how cold it was.
Raining.
Like some sort of wind chill factor.
Did you see my big scarf I had on?
You were bundled up.
I was literally shaking, freezing, and the PR guy for Denton ISD goes, "We're gonna make sure we get you taken care of since you stayed out here in the rain and it's pretty cold." And I was sitting there like,
they get you a new car?
I got a new car.
I know, but they get you like another new car
Why do I need another?
because
car?
they're taking care of you. I assume
no, I just
that's
needed
what.
them to get me 3 players for the recruiting.
Oh,
which they
okay.
did.
Well, well, Denton Ryan, it's like name your players, right?
I mean, pretty much. Denton Ryan was on fire tonight as they won 58-20 over Abilene Cooper.
And I'm on record as saying that Denton Ryan won't be within 5 touchdowns of anybody they play until the 5th round, where they'll promptly lose.
Well, I'll make sure to keep that on record.
And look at that, 38.
Well, it was a really good game, but Denton Ryan kind of started off a little bit slow with the Seth Hennigan interception.
First quarter
And
was
It
not.
was in the third play of the drive. So right then and there, I was a little bit scared for Denton Ryan that I was going to have some not happy players that might lose a game, and then all of a sudden, they turned it on.
Come talk to us about your recruiting after you lost this big game.
Exactly, we can't do that. But they had 6 unanswered touchdowns.
They did.
Before Abilene Cooper touched it again.
And just a flat-out dominant victory. Drew Sanders, what can you say about him? I mean, the Alabama commit. Did you get to talk to him?
I did talk to Drew Sanders.
That is big balling right there.
Sanders he just got it all.
He's got it all.
He's got it all. Both sides of the ball.
Give us a weakness. Like if you're being a critical recruiting, give us a Drew Sanders weakness for the interwebs out there.
That he doesn't like doing interviews.
Okay.
That's about it.
So he's got. Well, he'd fit in with Nick Saban then.
He's great on the field. Period. He did not want to talk to me after the game.
His
but
loss.
He did. Thanks, dude. But yeah. Other than him not wanting to do an interview, he's a fantastic player. There's very little that I can say about Drew Sanders that I think him like that you can really critique about him. I mean, he runs the ball.
He does.
He passes the ball.
3 receptions for a touchdown, 100%.
3 passes.
3 passes.
For 3 attempts and 1 touchdown.
Ran the ball 7 times, 100 yards and a touchdown.
For another touchdown.
He catch the ball.
He plays defense.
He did.
He's a fantastic outside linebacker. I mean, I'd put him at an outside linebacker. Granted, he wants to be on the offensive side of the ball when he goes to Alabama, but homie, you can play linebacker pretty well.
And yet another player, and I appreciate this about Denton Ryan, you take your best players, play them both ways if
Billy
you need
Bowman
to.
Jr. does the same thing.
8 catches for 3 touchdowns. It's bobblehead-like numbers.
We don't give away any more bobbleheads.
It would be like bobblehead-like.
Ish.
Ish.
We don't start
That was
getting
not
people's
on the
hopes
memo
up.
of things we can't. I can say the word bobblehead still.
I'm just making sure you don't get people's hopes up.
I'm just okay. Billy Bowman, 8 catches, 110
a
yards.
fantastic night with 474 total yards.
Now, were you up in the press box or are you down with the people?
I did both.
As you, I kind of, even though you consider yourself a Denton guy or aficionado, I consider yourself kind of an Alito person.
That's fine.
Because you got Alito. And I got frustrated tonight because Alito, with a dominant victory, 34-14 over Red Oak. Would you say a 34-14 victory is a good victory in the 3rd round of the playoffs?
For a normal team, yes. For Alito, no.
Not for Alito. There were so many fans and journalists who kind of lean Alito who are just complaining about how Alito is down. Alito is not Alito. Alito is a team that is probably by any metric going to make the state championship this year. We don't know if they're going to win the state championship, but they're going to make it to the state championship.
That Shadow Creek team's really
And
good.
people are complaining. They're complaining about it. Like they're not winning with enough style points. They're not winning by enough.
When you think
And
Alito,
you even just said it. Like
yeah, because when you think Alito, I see them playing any team in 5A and beating them by 12 touchdowns.
But
I know
what
that's
kind
not-
of entitlement is that to where you just assume
That's
that
not
because
it. I don't think
you've
that's
got the A on your helmet that you're going to win every game by
That's
12
not
touchdowns?
entitlement.
It is entitlement.
I
It's the
think it's more-
definition of
it's
entitlement.
expectation.
Entitled expectations.
No, it's
Entitled
expectation
expectations.
It's an expectation of performance. Like when you think of Alito, you expect them to perform at a very elite level.
You can't expect a team to win the state championship every single year. You can expect them to be a 4-round deep team. You can expect them to always be a threat. You can expect them to be a team that you don't want to see on your schedule.
But wait. We don't. So you can't expect a team to win a
State title
title
every single year.
Every single year. But you sure as heck can say that you expect Highland Park to pretty much almost win a state title
No,
every
you-
single year. Granted,
winning-
this year's not going to happen.
Winning state titles is a new thing for Highland Park, relatively speaking. After Matthew Stafford broke the big streak, little lull, and then they had a good run, and I think we might have seen the burial of Highland Park tonight. But let's get back to Jace McClellan's fantastic night. 20 carries, 178 yards. I am mad at you, Alito, folks. Enjoy what you've got. I watched, you remember
I'm there with you, Alito.
when we first started this show, I came here the very first night from watching Alito versus Denton Geyer. It was one of the best games. Who won that game, by the way? Denton Geyer. Your Wildcats. Speaking of Denton Geyer, I have to interrupt this for a second. How did you watch kind of what happened last week, that Denton Geyer game?
Did not.
That
I
comeback.
have not been able to make. Oh no, but I do know what happened.
You do know what happened. Did you?
4 touchdowns.
Were you just prideful? 3 onside kicks and John Walsh just turning on the weird football.
Did you hear about that story about the onside kicks?
About the backup lineman
Yeah.
that's all he does is just practice this.
Yeah.
That's such a John Walsh thing.
I love
To
it.
have that card in your back. We're just going to have some random lineman just practice onside kicks. I fell in love with a little more
During
John Walsh.
It
little
happened
more.
during a rain delay of all the things in the world.
Just practice that skill. Just
he
an
wanted
incredible
to
thing.
play.
See, Alito and Denton Geyer are intrinsically linked from that first game of the year. And just Jake Bishop had a very workmanlike night. He didn't have to throw it much. He got the first downs when he needed, 7 out of 17 for 108 yards. And all I do is hear people talk about, well, Joshua Irvin for Red Oak threw for 227 yards, and C.J. Palmer ran for 100 yards, and Alito, bad. What's wrong with you people from Parker County?
Because
What is
Alito
wrong?
needs to win by 90 to make it a legitimate win.
It's called bullying, according to
Well,
some people.
Too bad, so sad.
But
Not
congratulations to
everyone
Alito. I want to see, and Alito's going to have a relatively winnable game next week against Ennis, and they're going to have a very winnable game against the winner of Ryder and Lubbock Cooper the next week. State title game, that matters. There are some questions there, but whether it's a Fort Bend Marshall, I think it's Shadow Creek Division I. I think Shadow Creek's
Creek's
Division
Division
1. Are they? I'm going to double check on that, but I don't keep up with Houston stuff. But whatever the case is with that, I think that Alito has a clear path to the state championship, and we'll see what happens in the
Shadow
state
Creek
championship.
Played Alito last year.
That doesn't mean they're going to play him this year.
That's what I'm saying, but they're Division 2, that's what I'm trying to say.
Okay, well,
They're Division 2, believe me, I know, I just
She
talked about
does.
it 20 minutes ago.
hopefully you were right and I'm wrong. 'Cause I don't like Houston football. I'm sad about Houston football. Did you see all the results that happened tonight?
Very interesting.
I picked Klein Collins to beat Jesuit. I picked them.
I think
When
a lot
I
of
pick a
people
team,
pick
you
Klein
gotta
Collins.
win. I have pick'ems.
Okay,
all
we
over
will
the
talk
internet.
about that Jesuit Klein Collins game real quick. So
Talk it up.
Jesuit shocks and awes
Shocks and Oz.
the world again as they beat Klein Collins. Last week they took down the Lobos. This week they take down the Tigers as they win 28-21 under the workhorse. EJ Smith.
4 touchdowns, E.J. Smith, playoffs. I mean, this is almost like Notre Dame legendary stuff, what he's doing. I mean, this is like Rudy running out, just ridiculous stuff right there.
We
I mean, come on, EJ. Look at that.
So he's pretty much in a world of his own at this point.
Look at those stat lines.
Oh yeah, 21 attempts, 62 yards rushing,
3 touchdowns.
3 touchdowns,
And look at that receiving.
two receptions for 103 yards and 1 touchdown. Have yourself a night, EJ.
EJ Smith is like, if we're doing an MVP for the whole year, I mean, how can you say anybody but EJ Smith right now is not the MVP?
I think it's
I mean,
interesting.
it is just.
Okay, I'll say this. For Jesuit, Dallas Jesuit, there's a lot of players that play well on that team. So I'm not going to discredit the rest of the team or the other 21 players playing on the field.
But she's about to
EJ
discredit
Smith
the other 21 players on the field.
has literally put that team on his back
Yes.
and said, give me the ball, let's win a football game.
And I'll tell you some other players because we don't want to discredit. What about Rance Holman? I mean, this playoff run by him, he has been an unsung hero. Workman-like. I mean, you talk about a team that is known for the run, and he completes 9 of 13 for 238 yards and a touchdown, over 25 yards of reception. Just clutch with him. And then Jake Taylor hasn't been needed much, but if you stop E.J. Smith, if you're going to do one of those Randy Allen things where you're going to stop one player like they did Marvin Mims today, and we're going to stop E.J. Smith, Jake Taylor is certainly capable of filling in the shoes.
Most definitely. And on top of that, Jake Taylor usually is the workhorse.
Right.
They give him the ball more often, and he gets a lot of yards. And then you give it to E.J. Smith to finish. In the playoffs, though, they've said, okay, we're going to rely on E.J. Smith, and then if we need to, we'll put Jake Taylor in there. Granted, Jake Taylor, you're still a workhorse. We appreciate you.
We do. Let's talk about something real quick between me and you. Shadow Creek Division 1. Say it with me. Shadow Creek Division 1. So they played Highland Park last year in the playoffs. They're Division 1 right there. Division 2, we might got a Fort Bend Marshall. We might get a Manville. A little Alvin ISD love right there. Shadow Creek Division 1.
Might have said that wrong. I'm a Houston
You made me question myself
Wait.
there. But Alvin Shadow Creek, and what is up with them against Richmond Foster? That is like crazy stuff.
Fort Bend Marshall.
Fort Bend Marshall, there you go.
Okay. That's what I was
But
thinking of.
Fort Bend Marshall against Toledo is kind of our penciled in state title
Sorry,
game.
guys. I was thinking Fort Bend. No, Manville actually beat Fort Bend Marshall earlier this year. They might play again if they give
might.
Fort Bend Marshall can beat
Barbers
Huntsville.
Hill. Yeah. And we know Huntsville's already beat one Marshall this year, so we will find out about that. But again, I know this isn't a Houston thing, but when I was at a football game, I was like Alvin Shadow Creek was down by 3 touchdowns against Richmond Foster for like the 3rd time, and what they do, they just roar back.
Alvin Shadow Creek is ridiculous.
They are, and they're a team that you can't keep down. Like you get up 3 touchdowns on them, it's not enough.
Definitely
But they won't be playing Highland Park this year because in a fantastic, epic game at AT&T Stadium, Highland Park fell to Frisco Lone Star 33-27
in overtime.
And what did you glean from that game?
Well, first off, Ward, you were wrong.
Ward.
I sat there on camera and asked you if you really wanted to make that prediction.
Oh.
I have it. I will play it again for you because
Poor
I
Ward.
said probably Lone Star. So thank you very much.
Made her look bad.
You made me look.
Her reputation is impeccable, except to 7-year-olds. The 7-year-old demographic,
And to
not
people in
impeccable.
Longview, they don't like me very much.
Well, Longview's not playing in the playoffs, and Denton Geyer is, so what can you do? So's Alito.
So I didn't get to watch this game. So I actually was sitting in the press box with the Highland Park people were in front of me.
They're scouting out because
Yes,
that's...
they were watching the game, so I was watching what they were watching. From what I could see in that first half, because they left after that. Excuse me. From what I could see,
It's a long day when she goes to games.
Hey, I've been working since 11.
Oh, you are the hardest working woman in sports entertainment media kind of a thing. Yeah.
So from what I saw in those first 2 quarters was that they looked pretty evenly matched. Like
Sure.
they were going blow for blow for blow for blow, back and forth between these 2 teams. Um, but the one thing I did notice was that Lone Star's defense seemed to be a little bit more on point.
Well, I mean, you would expect that, just because they probably objectively have a better defense. But a couple of variables in this game. One thing I see, and I get so frustrated about this, Ashley, it's another Professor Diggs rant. Just when officials get involved in football games, just too much. And I mean, look at those penalty yardage. You have Highland Park 10 penalties for 143 yards. You have Frisco Lone Star 12 penalties for 141 yards. I went to a 3A game tonight with Malakoff and Pottsboro. They threw the flag 2 times. Are you telling me that Pottsboro and Malakoff are really more disciplined than Highland Park and Frisco Lone Star? Or do you have a referee crew that wanted to make themselves the star of the show, wanted a little camera time at AT&T, and just had to micromanage everything? Come on, refs, be better.
Well, okay then.
Just saying. But the big difference in this game, and we talked about Highland Park's Achilles heel against Lancaster and against Timberview and against Lone Star in round 1, was the turnovers. And that's what they corrected. They had 0 turnovers. They played a clean game. In fact, they got a turnover on Lone Star, and they still couldn't seal the deal. So when you look at all of that, I think if you look at the totality of the series, I think you have to just agree that Frisco Lone Star was the better team this year.
I think so. I look at I didn't get to watch this game. I got to see our Inside High School Sports DFW highlights because we had our boys out there looking at them. But looking at the box score, looking at these stats, I look at Garrett Rangel.
Garrett Rangel. We got a long name.
Rangel. I don't know. His mom's trying to get me to say his name correctly.
Like, are you two working on it in
We're
Twitter
working
DMs?
on it. Yes, I'm not the best at it.
Rangel. I like that.
I think that's what it is.
Rangel.
That or gel. Rangel.
Rangel.
One of the two. I apologize for getting it wrong again. I'm trying my best.
She's the hardest working woman in sports
Should have
entertainment.
gone and listened to how somebody pronounces it, but my apologies. But you look at his stats, 35 completions, 3 touchdowns, 417 yards.
Just so, and that just back up. And when we see with these, that they consistently got backed up because of penalties, consistently backed up because of good special teams on Highland Park, and he was able to overcome 2nd and long, 3rd and long. Just a real valuable player. And I saw in the article on Twitter that people had talked about how Highland Park said, we're going to take it away. It's kind of like the Bill Belichick model of we're going to take away your best component, beat us with something else. And Marvin Mims was that person. They put the high safety over him and challenged Rangel. Now it's in my head. To beat them, and he did. And 417 yards, just a fantastic night. And because to beat a champion like Highland Park, you have to put your foot on your throat and you have to kill them. I mean, you have to destroy the monster. And we all knew this, and we've talked about this for the last 10 weeks. Playoff Highland Park is a different animal than regular season Highland Park. And Highland Park gave it everything you wanted. Chandler Morris, you might be able to call him up for the recruiting trail since his recruiting is wide open. But that was when he was with Arkansas, right? Huh? So
No, I don't get burned and go back. Marvin Mims, I'm a little salty with you right now too.
A Bullington 0. Hook her up on Twitter about that. But man, just Chandler Morris, from everything I read, just absolutely poured his heart out into this game. Scrambles, just everything you could want. 19 carries, 83 yards, basically put the team on his back. And just when it counted in overtime, the kicker missed it, and Frisco Lone Star converted. What can you say?
And we were talking about this last week, that Chandler Morris seems to be that offense.
Right.
It's the thing that the one thing I think that Lone Star had besides its phenomenal defense was that you look at this receiving, and Garrett has 5 different people that he can go to besides, or including Marvin Mims, and then for quite a bit of yards. Like it's those 417 yards besides to Trace Bruckler were pretty scattered out. Like not one person was your entire offense like normal.
Right. We talk about Lone Star almost every week on this show, and have we said the word Trace Bruckler one time?
Nope.
No. And yet he was an all-star tonight. 14 catches, 183 yards. That is the depth of Frisco Lone Star. I mean, we talked about Jade Nixon before. We've talked about other players. We talked about Jake Bogdan quite a bit. But Trey Spruckler, have yourself a night. And some hidden yardage that you don't see on here is his first 2 pass attempts that were incomplete, but DPIs were called. So, I mean, they moved the ball. They targeted Bruckler and moved the ball with him. Congratulations to Lone Star. I know that was an albatross on their back. You got to beat the champions. To quote Ric Flair, to be the man, you got to beat the man. And now Lone Star is the man. And next week they will take on Lancaster, who defeated Frisco Independence tonight.
Another big game that was going on in the Metroplex that didn't seem to end up being as big of a game as we thought it might be. But Duncanville and Arlington Martin went head to head, and Duncanville took down the Warriors. But I did hear that Duncanville's passing game didn't seem to be to the level that it needed to be.
Well, I mean, they did it on the ground, and it's hard to nitpick. It's kind of what I was talking about with Aledo, the disappointment with Duncanville and Arlington Martin. And I started to get a feeling about this game as the week went on. In fact, I saw several computer polls actually picked Arlington Martin to win. Because Duncanville doesn't have to win pretty. They just win efficiently. They win 28-7. They are very frequently substituting in the second half. They don't need to blow teams out to feel good about themselves. They don't need to pull a Southlake and win 84-6 to show themselves. But now that we're seeing Duncanville get into the second and third round, big win over Flower Mound last week, big win over Arlington Martin this week, they're starting to find the gear. And we kind of talked about penciling in that Southlake Duncanville fourth round matchup. And what about that if Southlake can beat Midland? That could be a fantastic football game and definitely a clash of titans. But 527 total yards for Duncanville. Talk about our buddy Jaquindon Jackson, 164 carries, 16 carries, 3 touchdowns, and this is a two-headed monster with Tristan Smith, 20 carries, 130 yards. And who needs to look good? I mean, we talk about efficiency, 10 of 15, 135 yards. They don't need to throw it. I mean, if they need to throw it, I trust that a Texas commit like Jaquindon Jackson can probably throw the football. But if they can rush it on the ground, I think that's where they would prefer to keep their bread and butter.
And that's the big thing that that Jaquindon has been told that he needed to prove all year from the Texas staff was that they wanted to see him throw. They want him to change up his offense a little bit.
But don't you want to win? I mean,
but he has. But that's my point. Is like he has been doing that. He did it throughout the season when he needed to. Now it's, hey, let's go win a state championship.
Right.
Let's go. Let's do it on the ground. Let's use our legs and our speed, and they do it well. So why not stick to your bread and butter and make sure that you're gonna put up 45 on somebody?
Now, one thing I'm unaware of, because again I wasn't at the game, is looking at the stats. I see Zach Mundell only threw the ball 4 times, and a guy named Sid Ford came in. Have to wonder if Zach Mundell got hurt at some point.
We'll have to talk to Ryan Harris about that in our next segment.
So, Ryan, let us know how that worked out. We will quiz you on it.
The last game of the night that we are going to talk about before we head to break and come back with Ryan Harris.
And we'll talk about other things,
We'll talk about other things later, though.
But there's a clock ticking on us. You have 57 seconds, by the way, to talk about that game.
Your microphone. Here, can I
56,
help you?
55,
Thank you.
54.
So, anyways, Lancaster wins against Frisco.
How long was that
tonight.
bothering you?
I just noticed it,
Oh,
so
okay.
that's why I fixed it.
Okay.
But I just noticed it.
I thought it could have been like there for 7 minutes, and you were just
No,
stewing.
it's probably been there for 25 minutes.
Well, of
but
course.
Anywho, but Lancaster beats Frisco Independence tonight, 34-10. And how about those Tigers?
What about the second half? I mean, when you really look at how that stat line worked, it was 3-0 Independence going into the halftime break. And Lancaster got a little talk from Chris Gilbert into halftime, and they poured it on 34 unanswered points in the second half to pretty much put that game away.
Yeah, they got a nice little ripping into.
And I mean, just Glenn Rice Jr. was really the just the spurhead of that. 168 yards on the throwing the ball for a touchdown. DQ James, our buddy, I saw he got a touchdown. Trey Bradford, another good night, 3 touchdowns, 22 rushing attempts, 159 yards. And then Glenn Rice Jr. just led the offense back. was efficient with his quarterbacking. Lancaster will be taking on Frisco Lone Star next week. That'll be a fantastic game.
And then Denton Ryan.
Denton Ryan. Where Denton Ryan will promptly lose, as they have been known to do for the last 4 years.
Well, in talking to those boys tonight, the state championship is the only thing on their mind.
Well, we will find out. So what are you and Ryan going to talk about coming up? Do you have like a run sheet with Ryan?
No,
our buddy?
we're gonna discuss when he gets on the phone with me here in a few minutes. But when we come back with the fifth quarter, we will have Inside High School Sports Insider Ryan Harris, and then we'll bring Mr. Professor Diggs back for the final segment as Ward Fasold is down in Waco covering Rockwall tonight Dallas Jesuit versus Klein Collins, and tomorrow Rockwall versus Klein Oaks, so we won't be on the show with us, but we have it all wrapped up and ready for you guys.
Got to work over Ryan on the phone. Just let him know who the boss is. That's you.
I am the boss. But we will be right back with the fifth quarter.
Don't forget to catch our extended coverage of the high school football season each week on The Warm-Up, presented by your local North Texas Geico agents. We will get you ready for all the action this Thursday on all our social media outlets. Watch Inside High School Sports to catch this week's MVP, brought to you by GiveMeTheVin.com. These MVP athletes make it look easy, just like GiveMeTheVin.com makes it easy to sell your car.
And we are back. We have a special guest on the show with us tonight, as the Wizard cannot be with us. Ryan Harris, our Inside High School Sports Insider. Ryan, you got to go to AT&T and witness some pretty great games, including the talk of the night, which was Lone Star versus Highland Park. First off, I have to ask, since I was in Denton Ryan and freezing my rear off, how was the atmosphere there? What was it like? And also, how warm were you the whole time? Because I'm still very jealous.
Well, we were definitely warm out at AT&T. We're really thankful for those facilities and not having to shoot the games outside like maybe they had to do about 20 years ago. But yeah, it was warm. It was nice inside, and the atmosphere was great especially for a third round game. Of course, Lone Star and Highland Park both have two of the better fan bases in the area, so you knew that was kind of coming in this one. As you know, Duncanville and Arlington Martin preceded this game, and they didn't have quite the atmosphere. Of course, it wasn't as close of a game, but this one comes down to the wire in overtime, and the fans on both sides were loud and into it and animated, and so that's what I live for, covering these games. I love the atmosphere. Obviously it wasn't quite state level atmosphere, but it was a great time.
So let's talk about that game a little bit. The Wizard on the warm-up had us picking Highland Park at the beginning of the week, or on Thursday. And Lone Star, though, comes in, does it again. They kind of throw up that 5A Division I bracket and say it's ours for the taking after that.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Lone Star, I mean, their road to the playoffs is much harder. There's really three teams that everybody's looking at in DFW and 5A. That Frisco, Lone Star, Highland Park, and of course Denton Ryan. Now Ryan gets to go out west. They played Abilene Cooper today and won, so they'll play the winner of tomorrow's Birdville and Colleyville Heritage matchup. But Lone Star's got to go play a good Lancaster team next weekend. And then after that, they'll get Ryan, of course, after beating the three-time defending state champions. So they have the tougher road for sure, but I was impressed with them today. They've got a lot of athletes, a lot of height, a lot of speed, and they looked like the better team. Of course, this is the kind of game, and we saw this again, too, with Rockwall and Allen last week. It's the established program against the better team, but, these are the kind of games that teams like Highland Park and Allen win. When it gets close late in the game, you expect Highland Park to come out with the win. So the game went to overtime, and Highland Park wasn't quite able to pull it out. They didn't do anything, and they got the ball first and couldn't score at all. So that took a lot of the pressure off Lone Star, and of course Jaden Nixon scored the game-winning touchdown.
So in that moment, you got to be there. I didn't. So in that moment when Highland Park doesn't get any points on the board, What was the energy like of those Lone Star players as they're about to get the opportunity to go and take this game from the 3-time defending state champs?
Oh, they're led by a sophomore quarterback, Garrett Rangel. Again, much like Rockwall, they're led by a sophomore quarterback as well, with a really talented, experienced senior wide receiver. That guy for Lone Star is Marvin Mims, the recent Oklahoma commit. And Rangel looked composed. They all looked composed. It's like they knew what they were about to do. They didn't come out. I mean, they knew all they needed was a field goal. They came out throwing the ball. I mean, I think in most situations, a lot of teams will run 3 times and kick the field goal. They came out throwing the football. And then, of course, after picking up a first down, they run Jaden Nixon into the end zone. And I think, throwing on the previous downs helped open up a lane for him to score.
So we're going to transition to the game that was before that one, Duncanville versus Arlington Martin. Arlington Martin was one of those teams all year that was kind of just down and dirty. They were a tough team to beat. They played really hard on special teams. They were a little bit more of an all-around team, but Duncanville comes in and shows that they are here to win a state title as they beat Arlington Martin. Can we kind of give us a synopsis of that game and just tell us? I mean, I haven't got to go see Duncanville actually this year, but how well-rounded is that Duncanville team?
I'm not sure well-rounded is the term I would use for Duncanville,
Okay.
to be honest with you. They're really dominating in the run game, but they don't pass it as well as you would like them to. Jaquindon Jackson completed 10 of his 15 attempts. He had 135 yards, didn't throw a touchdown, but didn't throw an interception. But they got it done on the ground like they always do. Jackson led them in rushing as well with 164 yards and 3 scores. And then Tristan Smith with 130 yards and 2 scores. Roderick Daniels added 98 yards. So you can tell most of their offense comes from the running game. And then their defense didn't play quite as well as you would have liked for a team that you expect to be the favorites, according at least to a lot of the national experts to win the state championship. Of course, I think North Shore is still the more all-around complete team. I know they have the loss. They avenged that loss down in Houston this afternoon to Katy with a pretty big win. And I know you probably talked about that on the 5th quarter for Houston, but Duncanville, they play Southlake. They'll probably play Southlake next week. Of course, Southlake has a date tomorrow with Midland Lee, but I think I like Southlake in that matchup, to be honest with you. I think they're more of an all-around team, but they don't dominate the run game like Duncanville dominates. When they get rolling, they're really, really good.
And Southlake has that sophomore quarterback as well, Quinn Ewers, who is he is phenomenal. But another team with a really good run game that played tonight was Dallas Jesuit, as they do it again. They kind of just shock all of Texas, as last week they beat Longview and this week they beat Klein Collins. Do you think, or do you see a maybe state final run or state semifinal run from this Dallas Jesuit team?
That's definitely in the cards for them. And after they beat Longview, you started to look around that bracket and you say, man, it's open. It is wide open. They beat Klein Collins today. They'll take on the winner of Spring Westfield and Hewitt Midway next week before getting Denton Geyer in the state semifinals. And I think it'll probably be Jesuit and Geyer for the right to represent Dallas-Fort Worth in state. And then they'll probably take on Austin Westlake from the opposite side of that bracket. So they definitely have a chance. I mean, they've got one of the best players in the state in their running back, Emmett Smith, and he scored 4 touchdowns for them today, led the team both in receiving and in rushing. He had 62 yards on the ground and 3 touchdowns, and then another 103 yards receiving and a touchdown. So he's been the kind of all-around player that they've needed. He's been the steady force, the guy that they turn to when they need to pick up a first down or when they need to score. Of course, they beat Klein Collins 28-21, but I see them going another round or 2 deep, and again, maybe making a state championship game.
The Inside Story is driven by your North Texas Honda dealers. Right now, they can help you get great deals on award-winning Hondas. It's their job to be helpful, so stop by your local helpful Honda dealer today.
Digsy,
Hi.
What are we going to be talking about in this segment?
This segment, we're going to talk about everything that is yet to come. It's like a Pink Floyd song. We've talked about everything under the sun. Now we're going to talk about all that is to come. And to do that, we will just kind of look through the brackets in 6A, and we'll start out in 6A Region 1. And the big game this week is Midland Lee against South Lake Carroll, because we know the winner of that will take on Duncanville. And what about South Lake Carroll? I know you're a big fan of South Lake Carroll.
I like me some Quinn Ewers.
You love Quinn.
I like Quinn.
You love sophomore quarterback.
I do.
This is like the year
Jesuit,
of the sophomore.
Rockwall, Southlake, all teams that are still playing could possibly win state titles, and win the game in the sophomore quarterback.
And with a good surrounding cast, R.J. Mickens, South Lake Carroll is just a fantastic team. And Midland Lee had a case of the Cedar Hills last week, except they were able to hold on. Midland Lee got up 35-0 against Arlington Lamar and had to hold on in the fourth quarter. Deflected pass on fourth down, and the red zone was the only thing that kept an unlikely comeback from occurring with Arlington Lamar. And I think South Lake Carroll is just going to destroy Midland Lee this week.
I mean, you might not be wrong.
I never am, except when I am.
Well,
And we ignore that.
Didn't
we
you pick
ignore
Klein Collins as
all
your
that.
Jesuit?
I did. Klein Collins as your Jesuit.
I win.
You do win. Congratulations to Klein Collins. And speaking of the Klein ISD, our good friends in Klein ISD, Region 2 has two Dallas versus Houston area games. Did y'all talk a little Dallas-Houston area
We did.
action on the Houston
We
inside
did.
fifth quarter thingy?
Klein,
bopper?
you got some Klein Oak versus Rockwall.
And you got the Woodlands
And you got
against
the
Prosper.
Woodlands versus Prosper.
And you are now known for all of eternity as she who hates the Woodlands.
Don't hate the Woodlands.
Why do you have you ever been to the Woodlands?
Yes.
It's a cute little town. Like everything's in the forest, and it's just,
It's quite.
how can you not love the
I
Woodlands?
don't hate the Woodlands.
They're the Highlanders. But you're taking the Woodlands, or you're taking,
Taking
Prosper.
Prosper.
To find out
Definitely
if you
taking
will
Prosper.
be eating Woodlands Crow one more time. And I know that you are very excited about a game in the Houston area, and it could impact things.
Yes.
Katie Tompkins against Humble Atascocita.
Yes.
Tell us about it.
I think
Give
this
us your
game
mental
is
dump.
going to be fantastic. One, because Atascocita is literally one of the best teams in the state. I don't care what anybody has to say. Atascocita, besides their one loss to Katy this season, has put up an average of 63 points every single game.
Pretty impressive.
60 points every game.
Except beating Houston teams by 50 is like beating Houston teams by 50.
I don't care. 60 points is a lot of points.
It's a lot of points.
So, but yeah, so they play Katy Tompkins, which Tompkins is a phenomenal team this year. Jalen Milrow at quarterback has just been phenomenal all season. He is a force to be reckoned with. He can use his feet. He's got a good arm. They've got all kinds of really good targets on playing wide receiver. Their defense is solid. Katy Tompkins is a really good team. They're kind of the dark horse of that Region 3.
Yeah.
Yes, of that Region 3.
You made me doubt Alvin Shadow Creek in the
Sorry,
first segment, so
sorry.
I'm just
But they're kind of
Here.
the dark horse of that Region 3. But definitely a game that I'm looking forward to seeing who wins. I personally think Atascocita wins. I hate to say that, but I think Atascocita takes that one to go on to play North Shore next week. And that's
North Shore
going
with
to
an
be
impressive win over
that's
Katy.
going to be a big game.
Vengeance for Galena Park North Shore over Katy. Won when it counted. And I remember somebody was telling me about the controversy of the good running back for North Shore who basically called that shot. Like he said after that game, we'll get him in the playoffs. And sure enough, they did. And he had a great day. I can't remember, this is not a Houston show, so don't criticize me. I'm not a Houston person. Not even a statewide person. I'm a Dallas person sharing Dallas thoughts with you.
No, I'm proud of you.
And I'm jealous of Katy ISD because you've got Katy High School that's like one of the best teams of all time. And then their district expands, and then you got Katy Tompkins, Katy Taylor. I mean, you've had Cinco Ranch have good runs, Katy Pytow,
PayTal.
PayPal. Sounds like PayPal. And just Katy ISD is a good football district. Like, used to have Katy and Plano, and now Katy is doing great things, and here we are,
So
Plano.
So I actually did a segment about how many times in the last 10 years Katy and North Shore have played.
How many?
Did 10,
10?
11 tonight. Katy leads right now. It would be 6-5 to North Shore. The North Shore has more the last couple of years.
North Shore is coming back. And I just think that life is telling us that we need another Duncanville Galena Park North Shore game in our life.
I would be not against
The
that.
football gods. I was having a conversation with someone this week, and he joked about how the football gods were probably just like, you know what, Reginald Samples, just wait 1 more year. You gotta suffer just a little bit more before you get that state championship game.
Well.
It'll be worth it. So hopefully, as we are running into and I know a lot of teams, I know South Lake's gonna have something to say about it, and I know that we were talking off camera. You're really excited about the prospect of a Rockwall Duncanville state semifinal game.
I want to see those. So they're completely different offenses.
Right.
Duncanville runs the ball so well. Granted, Rockwall can run the ball, but their game, their bread and butter is in the air.
Yeah.
Two completely different teams hitting AT&T Stadium to say, we deserve this more than you. I want to see who wins. And you said all season that you didn't think Rockwall wins big games.
They have changed the narrative after that first
So I want to
big
see
win
it.
over that. And you have said you will go with it.
I will go. I will
Is
be
that
there
AT&T?
because it'll be at AT&T Stadium, and I don't have to weather any more weather.
Weather. I like your use of
Thank you.
weathering.
My homonyms?
Homonyms. That's a good word right
Thank you.
there, especially off your not even thinking about it. I couldn't think about that. I'm a teacher. My day job.
I win.
6A Division II. How about Arlington versus Denton Guyer? And our new thing is you're trying to take on more picks. You want to make more
Yes.
picks. So tell us, Arlington, Denton Guyer.
Denton Guyer all the way, baby.
Yeah, this is one that a lot of people think statistically is a 1-2 score game, but I think Denton Guyer is just going to blow the doors off Arlington. I think 3-4 scores. We'll
Okay.
find out. And then I have made people in Amarillo, Tascosa angry for the last year, and I'm doing it again because I'm taking Marcus over Amarillo, Tascosa, even though Tascosa is like beating me in picks like 4-1. Because I pick against them every time they play a DFW school, and they keep winning. They keep knocking out my DFW
Maybe
schools.
if you just start picking Tascosa to win, they'll lose.
I don't want to pick Tascosa to win. They're
Well,
an Amarillo school.
They're going to keep breaking your
Only
heart.
good thing in Amarillo is that big steakhouse where you can get the big steak if you 100-ounce steak for free if you can eat it in an hour.
I wish.
Yeah,
If I could eat it in an hour, I
they
totally
have good
would.
chicken fried steak there too. Just saying. It's a stop down if I'm on I-40 going to that place. But that's the only good thing
So,
about Amarillo.
Does somebody want to go try to eat a 100-ounce steak? Do I have to eat it by myself?
Yes, insurance.
Oh.
But you get it for free.
I couldn't do all 100 ounces of it. I'm
And the
full
shrimp
after
cocktail.
15 ounces.
Well, you've got to practice. You got to work up to that.
Have you ever seen the people who competitive eat, like the women who competitive eat?
Like the men look like normal, like those hot dog eaters.
Yeah, the women are
Really
like tiny.
Crazy.
Like the women are like good looking and small. Like how does that happen?
would
I
wonder,
look at a piece of cake and I get fat.
would like a handsome man be attracted to a competitive eater?
I mean, if I made $1 million, yes.
So things to talk about on Twitter. You can @ABullington0 and
Let me
talk
know
about
how much competitive eaters
hypothetical about competitive eaters. And then Spring Westfield takes on Waco Midway next tomorrow, and the winner of that will take on Jesuit. I thought Klein Collins would beat Jesuit, and I think Spring Westfield is going to beat Midway, and I think Spring Westfield would beat Jesuit.
Make. It's a very unpopular take.
That is an unpopular choice, but on the Houston show they would like that.
Go Jesuit!
Spring Westfield, I have a very sad spot in my heart for Spring Westfield because the last time Plano East made a good playoff run, they played Spring Westfield, and they were up like by 20 on Spring Westfield, and Plano East quarterback broke their collarbone, Rico Smalls, and then Spring Westfield came back. But then they lost to Alamy next week. You are just rude. You are just rude. She is rude, folks. This is what I have to deal with. Like, she's the host. This is her show, and I have to come on and be ridiculed for my love of Plano East and her.
Here's your violin.
Cy Creek had a big comeback against Drake Jesuit.
They did. They had a very big comeback against Drake Jesuit.
I left Allen. It was 2010 Drake Jesuit, and then all of a sudden,
I reported that in the first half it was 2010 straight Jesuit,
yeah, and this
and that we'd give them more updates as it went.
Cy Creek just blew it up.
Cy Creek made a really good run last year too.
Because I was excited, like I had it on my run sheet of what are we going to talk about on this show, like the hypothetical of what would people be angry if Jesuit played straight Jesuit in the playoff, or like in the state championship? Would that make purist football people mad? But now we can't talk about it. It's straight Jesuit. Gone. 5A Division I tomorrow. We got Birdville against Colleyville Heritage.
Virgo,
You like Birdville in that?
maybe.
I'm taking Colleyville Heritage, but you know I think it's
Ladarius Nixon, Stone Earl.
Stone Earl is a fantastic quarterback, a leader among men. Colleyville Heritage, I like their defense, and I think when the first time they played, Colleyville Heritage had the better team, should have won that game. I think they will right that wrong, but I think when they played Denton Ryan, which we saw earlier, we talked about that extensively, I think they're still going to be a 4 to 5 touchdown underdog to them. Yeah. So good luck, Colleyville Heritage or Birdville.
All the teams.
Our
Good luck,
friends
sport.
Our friends at Hawk_football kind of threw some shade at me last week since they won and I picked them to lose. So I might get more shade if your Birdville upset pick hits.
Birdville, like me, I'm cooler.
She did pick you. Region 2, we already know what that regional final is going to look like. We have Lancaster against Frisco Lone Star. And for me, I'm going to have a hard time picking against Lancaster in this game because it's all about matchups. And I kind of go back to that McKinney North matchup, how Lancaster just completely dominated McKinney North because Lancaster has an above-average defense and an above-average offense. And she is bored by me talking about Lancaster's traits.
They're not very happy with me on Lancaster right now.
Okay. Whereas I think Highland Park has an elite offense, but maybe even a below-average defense this year. And I think that was basically a factor why Lone Star won that game. I think Lancaster can slow Frisco Lone Star down. I think they can kind of keep those peripheral backs. We talked about the receivers for Frisco Lone Star, how the unsung heroes kind of came out to play this week. I think they can cover Mims and cover them.
But how can you pick against the team that just took down
It's
Highland
easy.
Park?
I type on the internet. I say, I think Lancaster is going to win, and I hit enter.
Well, Lone Star, you have my vote.
That's how
I'm
you
picking
do
you
that.
as a state champion. You or
Look
Denton
at
Ryan.
that.
It'll be you or Denton Ryan.
Won't be dead right. Not be silly. Then Ryan will get to the state semifinals and promptly lose, like they have the last 4 years. 14-1.
Kind of hope y'all win now.
Mark it down. I bet they hope they win too.
Kind of hope y'all win just to rub him the wrong way.
I'm just saying, you got to win one of those games before I can say you can win those games. Maybe I'm just a secret agent for Coach Hennigan to try to motivate them. Like they can put me on their board as public enemy number 1.
Well,
Which is a shame because I love John Walsh so much. You know, great coach.
So you really liked it Dyer, but really hated
Hated
Ryan.
that. Right. Happens.
What about at Denton?
They can take or leave me over there. But Braswell, Cody Moore over there, an understudy of Coach Webb. They love it. So we'll find out what happens there. And then, obviously, in Region 3, a game of note is Alvin Shadow Creek against Manor after Manor beat Cedar Falls.
Manor.
Mustangs and Manor. Big win there. Region 1 and 5A, a rematch of a district championship. We got Lubbock Cooper against Wichita Falls Rider. This game is important because the winner of it will take on the winner of Aledo versus Ennis. And what is your Alito versus MS pick?
Alito, obviously.
So
And they're going to win by 40. No, I'm kidding.
So they'll probably win by 28 or so. That's why I'd probably pick Alito by 28 right now. And this has a good defense. I'd say 42-14.
Okay. Solid.
And then I think whoever wins, probably Lubbock Cooper gets out of that region. I think they'll be fed to Alito and probably lose by 21. Now I don't know how they're going to fare in the championship game against either a Manville or a Cal Allen or Fort Bend Marshall, but I think they'll at least make it there. Go to 4A. Love talking 4A football. And we are disappointed here at the fifth quarter because we were really looking forward to a Springtown versus Decatur rematch. But alas, the Dumas Demons, congratulations to the Dumas Demons. They have a creepy mascot, don't they?
Yes, he's a devil.
They have a very, very creepy looking mascot. But big win for Dumas, and then Waco La Vega against Argyle, rematch of an earlier game this year. Waco La Vega really struggled against Melissa. I think Argyle would just outscore them and take Waco La Vega right on out of the playoffs. Other rematches, we're going to have a big rematch from an amazing game last year in Region 3. Carthage against Midlothian Heritage. Do you like Midlothian Heritage on the show?
I mean, I don't dislike
Do we consider them like
We consider them in the Metro
do
Plus.
we have highlights of them?
Sometimes.
Inside high school.
Sometimes we do.
We should, and hopefully we'll have. That game was in Jacksonville at the Tomato Bowl, so we might not have highlights next week of that.
Where's the Tomato Bowl?
Far away,
Sorry, guys.
like Tyler.
Probably not.
Tyler, nah. I need that. We'll send our East Texas crew out there. And then in 4A
Hey,
Division
send me
2.
out there.
I'll send you out there. You
I'll be
love.
chilling right here.
Right here so you can talk to me.
Right here.
We will have the Pleasant Grove versus Gilmer game. I got to see Gilmer play Waco Connolly tonight. That was a very weird game because Gilmer got up 19-0, and then Connolly scored the next 20 points to go up 20-19, and then Gilmer scored the last 15 points to go up 35-20, 16 points to go up 35-20. Gilmer has a really good Daryl Bush is the name that we will talk about if he makes it to the state finals. But on Team Pleasant Grove, I think Texarkana Pleasant Grove will make it to the state championship. I don't know who they'll be playing in the state championship, if we'll get a little West Orange Stark action, or if this will be the year of Silsby finally, or if even Wimberley will make it. I don't even know if Wimberley won tonight. That was one that I saw people talking about that game as a crazy game.
Well,
all these crazy games.
we got some small town digs here.
Yeah, and more small town digs.
Small school digs.
Small school digs. You are loved in Brock, by the way. You are absolutely loved in Brock.
Hey, guys.
They know that when they tune on the fifth quarter, so we can talk about Brock for about 8 seconds every week. But they cherish and value those 8 seconds.
Good old 7-man back in the day.
They beat Bushland in overtime tonight.
Woohoo!
Big win for Brock.
6-man.
And they will take on Pilot Point in a game that is a rematch from a district championship game, which was a coming out party for Pilot Point, and Pilot Point beat Brock in the regular
Well,
season.
Brock, since you love me, I will give you some love too. I picked you.
Well, we talk like Pikachu. We talk about how there's like Highland Park. There's the playoff Highland Park. Playoff Brock is an impressive beast, but will playoff Pilot Point, PPP, playoff Pilot Point. I like that. Triple P. Will Triple P come to play for the Bearcats? And then we will have Pottsboro, our good friends, the Mighty Cardinals. This is my morning game. They beat Malakoff 38-31, and they will be taking on Gladewater, the Little Bears from East Texas.
Little Bears?
The Little Bear. Well, that's not their.
I was going to say, wait, are they actually a little bit?
They have a really historic stadium, Jack Murphy Stadium, out on US 80 in Gladewater. So, be a good game, Pottsboro against
Remember
Gladewater.
do you know what Ursulines?
Ursuline, is that like
Ursuline.
Ursuline? That's Jesuits' sister
Sister school.
Sister school. The Crusaderettes?
Hold on.
Well, if
keep
you don't
talking.
know, how do you know?
No, I remember. I think it's the Dandelions.
And speaking of mascots you love, Grandview was a big one tonight
Zebras.
over Cameron Yo,
They're the
and they will
Bears.
take on the Ursuline Bear. Or it's just singular there. not even Bears. He's like the Cardinal of Stanford.
So I remember them like
The
joking.
Bears.
So I had some girls I played soccer with growing up jokingly call themselves the Teddy Bears.
Teddy Bears.
That's why I thought of it. And you're like, Little Bears. And I was like, that kind of reminds me of Ursuline a little bit. Oh, yes.
And they will take on the Trojans of Troy. Troy beat Whitney this week. The Wildcats of Whitney go down. So Grandview wanted to avenge their loss against Whitney earlier this year, but instead they will have to avenge that loss through Troy and make it to the regional semifinal.
There's much worse things to do than avenge it through Troy.
There you go. And 3A Division II, Gunter with a big win over Rogers. So Gunter is our team to watch from DFW to see if they make it to state. I don't see anybody in 2A of note. Maybe Valley View against Crawford will be a game of note. Windthorst, that's a Wichita Falls area school. Munster, they do German stuff up there in the.
Like cheese?
Yeah, I like that. Munster cheese. They play Mart next week, and they have no chance against Mart. Mart's good.
Well, with that.
That's all I really got for what's going on next week.
So to let you guys know what's going on the show, we don't have.
You see how her voice just changed? Like she was like, "Ah, blah, blah," and then all of a sudden
Got
that
TV
part of
voice
your
on.
brain, and you went into TV voice.
Got TV voice
and you're
for
gonna
you.
sell us something. What are you gonna sell us?
I'm gonna sell y'all the show tomorrow. So the producer Ward, he is down in Waco right now, giving highlights of Klein Collins versus Jesuit, as well as Brockwell versus Klein Oak. So he will not be on the show with us tonight. So Diggsy and I are wrapping things up. But tomorrow we'll have highlights from Aledo versus Red Oak, Arlington versus Duncanville, Frisco versus Ennis, Lancaster, Frisco Independence. Several games that are going on tomorrow, like Rockwell versus Klein Oak, and then Arlington versus Denguire, Birdville versus Colleyville Heritage.
Is this the first time we're ending the show together?
This is the first time we're ending the show
Wow.
together. We also will have a really big bobblehead as we're giving away our Impact Player of the Year. 3 really good players are up for this one in Jace McClellan, Miles Price, as well as one other guy. I cannot remember his name off the top of my head. I'm sorry. It's getting late.
He
here.
probably won. The third person.
Probably. I don't know who
Battle
won.
for the bobblehead.
Mr. Ward, the Wizzy Fazold, knows who won, though. He will not tell me. And then we also
That
have.
Ward's a real jerk. You know that?
And
Like,
then-
he's getting on my nerves.
I'm sorry.
He's telling me what I can say, what I can wear. Like told me to cut my hair last week.
He did not tell you to cut your hair.
Slap
Don't say that.
Redskins
He did not
fan.
tell you to cut your hair.
him. Yeah, I saw it on the internet.
Yeah. But we also have a really touching story that NBC5 put together on a Flower Mound player who in a routine hit during practice. His life was threatened, nearly died. Very traumatic experience for him, but how he's come back and persevered from that. But a very touching story,
That
very
really is
heart.
a good story.
It's a phenomenal story. The guys at NBC5 did such a good job putting it together. We're really excited to have it as our NTX Honda Inside Story this week, and that they're allowing us to also use that story for our Wingstop Inside High School Sports. But all of that and more tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. on Wingstop Inside High School Sports, hosted by Pat Doney. But for Ryan Harris, Ward Fazold, the Professor Diggs,
Confused. I walked talked about why I'm confused last year.
and myself, thank you so much for
Thank
watching.
you, Ryan, for coming on, replacing George. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for watching the fifth quarter. We will see you guys